I am pleased to be with you tonight and to have the opportunity to introduce our guest speaker, the Right Honorable Sir Charles Michael Dennis Byron. To quote an article I read a few nights ago, Sir Dennis has been described as the best-known legal luminary from St. Kitts and Nevis, having served the world, region, and the Federation during a distinguished judicial career that has spanned more than 35 years. Indeed, one can appreciate why when you look at his accomplishments throughout his career. Graduating with an MA and an LLB from Cambridge University, Sir Dennis was called to the bar at the Honorable Society of the Inner Temple as a barrister at law of the High Court of Justice in England and Wales in 1965. From 1966 to 1982, he worked in private practice as a barrister at law throughout the Leeward Islands with chambers in St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla, until he was appointed to serve as a High Court judge of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court at the tender age of 38 years. This appointment would make him the youngest person to become a judge within the entire Eastern Caribbean to date. A few years later, in 1996, Sir Dennis would become the acting Chief Justice of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, ultimately being confirmed in this post in April of 1999. The following year, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II conferred on then Judge Dennis Byron the award of Knight Bachelor, only to appoint him 4 short years later as a member of Her Majesty's Privy Council. In June of 2004, Sir Dennis was sworn in as a permanent judge of the United Nations International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, and went on to serve as the tribunal's president for 2 terms until May 2011. Fast forwarding to September 1st, 2011, Sir Dennis was sworn in as president of the Caribbean Court of Justice, following the unanimous recommendation by the Regional and Judicial Legal Services Commission, and served in that role until July 3rd, 2018. Sir Dennis is very passionate about the development of regional jurisprudence, which is demonstrated by his attendance at numerous conferences on judicial reform programs. Being the founder and first chairman of the Commonwealth Judicial Education Institute, based in Halifax, he believes that the best way to improve our justice system is through continuous judicial education and the use of modern technology. Although Sir Dennis believes in the importance of good work ethic, I think it is safe to say that he also understands all work and no play would make Sir Dennis a dull boy. So, Sir Dennis balanced his hard work over the years with play in the form of some tennis and golf, and he once served as president of the OECS Lawn Tennis Federation. Sir Dennis also has the distinction of scheduling the first Davis Cup qualifier to be held at Warner Park Stadium between the OECS and Ecuador. He also enjoys listening to music and playing the guitar. In addition to serving locally, regionally, and internationally, and finding time for his hobbies, Sir Dennis is very much a family man, being the husband of Lady Norma Byron, with whom he has enjoyed the blessing of parenthood. Tonight, Sir Dennis will be speaking to us on the topic, whereas the people of St. Christopher and Nevis are committed to achieve their national objectives with a unity of purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our very distinguished guest speaker, the Right Honorable Sir Charles Michael Dennis Byron.
After hearing that wonderful introduction, I'm tempted to simply say thank you and return to my seat while you still have such a good impression of me. But I know I cannot do that, Your Excellency. If you permit me to adopt the protocol list, I would greet friends and wish you all the blessings for a happy New Year. I felt very deeply honored when I was invited to deliver this keynote address at the Prime Minister's Gala event tonight. And I stand here with fairly powerful emotions because, as you heard, this coincides to some extent with a new beginning for me as a recent retiree. As you have heard, I was called to the bar about 55 years ago, and I commented to the Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister, that when I was called to the bar, he was just 1 year old. And I was appointed a judge of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court in 1982, about 36 years ago. And as I reflect on my life and career, I remember where I came from. And I feel moved to begin tonight with the same words that I ended the final speech I made at the ceremonial sitting of the Caribbean Court of Justice to mark my retirement. And then I said, I must say a fundamental word of thanks to that little rock, St. Kitts. Just 68 square miles, the larger part of the Twin Island state of St. Kitts and Nevis, with a population of about 50,000, making it the smallest nation in the Western Hemisphere. But exercising the concept of our equality with an equal voting power of every other state and the United Nations. Imagine how I felt reminiscing that as a small boy coming from this little place, that I could have reached the pinnacle of success, serving as the president of an international criminal tribunal and having the rank of Under-Secretary General of the United Nations. So I close, as I said then, and I still say, by reaching out to the youth of our people in the Caribbean. Do not settle for second best. The sky is the goal. The only limitations that as a region we have are those imposed by our own imaginations. Rid ourselves of mental slavery. Rise up. Stand up for our rights, and imagine that the world would be a better place when we occupy our rightful and equal space. But tonight should not be about me, nor my professional callings. For when the invitation was graciously extended to me to speak at this event, I wondered about a potential theme and could not help but find the idea of unity an alluring topic. And I speak of unity in a very broad sense, which encompasses the prospects of national unity in St. Kitts and Nevis, and in the wider and historical promise of unity among the states of the Caribbean. The National Heroes Park, to some extent, also inspires this theme. The first three heroes were the Labour Party stalwarts, the triumvirate of Bratcher, Southwell, and France. Then there was the Nevis hero, Simeon Daniel, who surrendered his belief in secession to form a coalition government for the benefit of the state and the people as a whole. All of those were acknowledged as heroes after their deaths. So it is pleasure that I come to the only living national hero, the Right Honorable Sir Kennedy Simmons. Who is here with us tonight, the successful leader of PAM, who led the first real coalition government in the state and became the country's first prime minister after leading it to independence. Now that their statues have been unveiled at Heroes Park, it is interesting to see that these former combatants are occupying the same space in unity and hopefully sending out subliminal messages from which we all can learn. The historical quest for unity has been long and often a fitful struggle to give meaningful substance to the underlying desire of our people to tap into our potential and come together towards a common purpose. In the Commonwealth Caribbean, our colonial history is still evident in the inherited political cultures and institutions that have been adapted to the Caribbean democracies. Despite a few dark spots on the historical landscape, this region has emerged as one of the most democratic regions in the developing world. Well over 100 general elections have been held in the independent states of the Commonwealth Caribbean since the first vote under universal suffrage was held in Jamaica in 1944. We here in St. Kitts attained it in 1952. Changes of government throughout our region have resulted from elections, not military or other coups. The Commonwealth Caribbean has a high incidence of political stability and a solid record of respect for democratic principles. Adherence to the rule of law is a key pillar of any democracy. Effective rule of law reduces corruption, increases public accountability, encourages respect for human rights, and protects people from injustices, both large and small. So coming closer home to St. Kitts and Nevis, I came across the World Justice Project Rule of Law Index, 2017 to 2018. It measures the rule of law based on the experience and perceptions of the general public and in-country experts worldwide. And it presents a portrait of the rule of law in 113 countries by providing scores and rankings. St. Kitts and Nevis was ranked third in Latin America and the Caribbean. And the highest in the Commonwealth Caribbean. The journey towards regional unity goes back to the era of slave resistance and revolt in the Caribbean. The stubborn and persistent no to the systemic dehumanization of an entire race of people laid the foundations for a unified regional movement underpinned by the common theme of resistance. The post-emancipation decades of the 19th and 20th centuries saw an extension of this foundation. Fast forward to 1958 and the experiment of the West Indies Federation, which, alas, collapsed in 1962. Some 2 years before the birth of the Honorable Prime Minister. When one thinks of the idea of unity, it would do well to remember that one of the Senkit's national heroes, Robert Bratcher, was a key figure in that Caribbean political union that was intended to become independent of Britain as a single state. Recall the tremendous promise of such a union. Of all of these different Caribbean countries coming together like a team unity. Mr. Prime Minister, you see, this idea has roots planted before your birth that could have grown into a tree of regional unity. But that failure has never stopped the idea of unity within our region. The following decades of unified struggle, influenced by conscious intellectualism and political leadership, resulted in the 1965 Dickinson Bay Agreement, establishing CARIFTA. Then graduating to the 1972 Treaty of Chaguaramas, which transformed CARIFTA into CARICOM and established the Caribbean Community and Common Market. And this has been further strengthened by the 2001 revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, which formed the legal basis for the establishment of the CARICOM single market and economy. For those who think that it is so difficult for us to unite as a people and a region, let us not forget that the Caribbean community is one of the longest-serving integration movements throughout the developing world. Then there's the Caribbean Code of Justice. In addition to its other utilities, it is an integral part of the operation of this single market and economy, and is an important symbol of regional unity. The CCJ has an original and appellate jurisdiction, and it is the original jurisdiction that is relevant to our discussion this evening. And every member state is a part of its operations, including St. Kitts and Nevis. In that capacity, the court exercises compulsory and exclusive jurisdiction to interpret and apply the provisions of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, thereby ensuring uniform application of its rules and promoting certainty in the operation of the single market and economy. In its short time of operation, the court has already had many famous cases in the original jurisdiction. For example, I give 3 examples. It responded to complaints from a cement manufacturer in Trinidad and compelled the Guyanese government to impose the agreed tariffs on extra-regional cement imports from the Dominican Republic. That case was the Trinidad Cement Limited and TCL Guyana Incorporated against Guyana. It had complaints from CARICOM manufacturers of wheat products to compel the Suriname government to impose tariffs on extra-regional imports from the Netherlands. That's the Hummingbird Rice Mills Limited against Suriname. And I suppose the most well-known case was the one establishing and enforcing the right of CARICOM citizens to hassle-free travel within the region. That's the Shanique Mary case against Barbados. Coming closer to home again, there's the 1981 Treaty of Bastille, which established the OECS with various aspects of cooperation, such as a common currency and a central bank, a unified judiciary, the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, and about 19 areas of shared institutions, including the Economic Cooperation Arrangement in the ECCM. This was enhanced in the 2010 revised Treaty of Bastille, creating the OECS Economic Union, with new bodies such as the OECS Assembly, comprising members of Parliament, as well as a strengthened secretariat, now called the Commission, and conferring supranational legislative competence in 5 areas: the common market and customs union, monetary policy, trade policy, maritime jurisdiction and boundaries, and civil aviation. So, how do we measure our democratic credentials? CARICOM countries primarily do so in terms of regular competitive elections. And elections are not merely a contest of vision and policies, but also an opportunity to improve the well-being of all citizens. Now, this latter objective is not always obvious because of the extreme tribalism of some political parties, where their narrow and self-interested agendas take precedence over the interests of citizens in general. Sometimes election outcomes in the classic first-past-the-post or winner-take-all systems pose challenge to governance. For example, there could be stress on the democratic institutions when a party sweeps the parliamentary seats and the government is without a formal opposition. We are observing this right now in Grenada, Barbados. Alternatively, where victory at the polls has been narrowly achieved, it may deny the government a strong mandate and could undermine its claim to legitimacy. I recall the situation occurred in St. Lucia in 1987, when the victorious party, the UWP, led by John Compton, immediately dissolved Parliament and went back to the polls within the same month in search of a stronger mandate. But alas, the new elections repeated the same outcome. Although on the second occasion, one member crossed the floor and strengthened the hand of the government. I think something like that also happened right here in St. Kitts and Nevis in 1993, when the general elections failed to produce a clear winner between the two major parties. And this eventually resulted in holding fresh elections just over 18 months later in 1995. Another stressful situation could be the termination of the life of a government ahead of the constitutional date of election, whether as an outcome of political pressure internally or externally. There's a current example of this right now in Guyana. Therefore, even in domestic politics, the idea of unity and merging of various political groupings seems to provide an antidote to tribalism. Coalition formation or building is a process of organizing parties collectively in pursuit of a common goal. At the heart of any unity-driven political coalition is a central concept of good governance. As a necessary component of good governance, the concept of accountability emphasizes the need for leadership to be answerable for its stewardship, thus strengthening good governance and empowering stakeholders and beneficiaries alike. In the Caribbean, there have been several other examples of electoral politics and successful coalition models. And illustrations can be found in Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana. And in Trinidad and Tobago, there were several such coalitions over time. The classic one was the last, the People's Partnership, which was a coalition of 4 parties formed in advance of the 2010 general elections. In Guyana, which incidentally has a different political system, a proportional representation system, which is more consistent with coalition governments. And the current government was essentially a coalition of former rivals. 6 parties came together to form one government. It, of course, is left to be seen whether that coalition will continue after the government was brought down by a no-confidence vote on the 21st of December, triggering the holding of elections within the next 3 months. The conditions, the coalitions served an important purpose in those jurisdictions, given their ethnic demographics and the tensions that often arose during election periods. So in observing those past movements, it's clear that compromise, rather than factionalism, must be the modus operandi of successful coalitions. Coming home to St. Kitts and Nevis, as you've heard, in the February 2015 national elections, Team Unity, a coalition of 3 parties, defeated the 20-year-old government of the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party. It has been suggested that this Team Unity was birthed out of the reality that St. Kitts and Nevis had become severely divided by politics. This is a belief that exists in countries throughout our region, a belief that political tribalism has become rampant and has failed to create better conditions for our region's people. But this Team Unity government was not the first government that saw participation from different parties in St. Kitts and Nevis. I recall in 1966 that the Brancher government drafted Eugene Waldron in as its Attorney General after he had fought the general elections against them as the leader of the UNM party in Nevis. And to those of you interested in political personalities, that relationship had not been easily foreseeable, because there had been a very hostile relationship between the two men previously, which included Bradshaw successfully moving a motion to have Baldwin expelled from Parliament during the previous term. The next major incident in political unification was novel and at the time completely unexpected. In 1980, the Labour Party, then being led by Lee Moore, had won 4 seats in St. Kitts against 3 won by PAM, led by our national hero, Dr. Simmons. In Nevis, the NRP, led by Simeon Daniel, which incidentally had been campaigning on a platform of secession from St. Kitts, secured 2 seats. And PEM and NRP formed a coalition government which lasted for 15 years under the leadership of Dr. Simmons. While PAM and NRP only came together after the 1980 election to forge a coalition alliance, it is worthy of note that Dr. Simmons continued to invite Sim Daniel and the NRP to form the government in the next 2 elections, even though PAM, on its own, had won the majority of seats. The coming of team unity did not take the country by surprise. On the contrary, the polls had suggested that the public was ready for a government of national unity, comprising combinations of people from all of the existing political groupings. Dr. Harris had been part of the Douglas government from 1995 to 2013. And during that time, he had held almost every ministerial portfolio, being Minister of Agriculture, Education, Labor, Social Security, Foreign Affairs, International Trade, Industry and Commerce, and Finance. But Harris had demonstrated other qualities. He was a brilliant intellectual. And at UWI, he sailed through his chosen field of accounting with first-class honors in his bachelor's degree and graduating top of the class with distinction in his master's degree. And while he was a minister of government, he took time out to pursue and then obtain a Doctor of Philosophy degree in administration, majoring in accounting. In 2013, he parted with the Douglas administration and helped to form the People's Labour Party. Perhaps one of Dr. Harris's best qualities was his willingness to embrace the dream of national unity. The creation of the Team Unity movement was formally established through a memorandum of understanding to form a political alliance with the PAM and CCM entitled the National Unity Agreement, signed by the leaders of the 3 parties in 2013. I thought that that was a very unique and novel arrangement. Whether it is as a result of my own ignorance or not, I had not seen such an agreement before. The agreement set out the principles of the unity concept, with each party subordinating its own agendas to the commitment of adhering to programs and policies that would benefit every citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis, regardless of race, gender, religion, political affiliation, place of origin, or birth. It stated that it was determined to build a society free of violence and based on several laudable principles, including the rule of law, good governance, social justice, fairness, openness, transparency, dignity, and equality. And it mapped out a framework with a clear national purpose, core values that would guide the process, the policies of any government it formed, which would be aimed at promoting the well-being of all citizens. The other unique accomplishment was the Charlestown Accord, an agreement between the three parties aimed at solidifying the commitment to develop Nevis on an equal footing with St. Kitts, completing a second wing of the unity concept. The first, unity between political parties, and the other, unity between St. Kitts and Nevis. With this vision, where the interests of each party were subordinated to the perceived national interests, those former political rivals joined forces. It is interesting to note that Dr. Harris accepted as the leader, team leader of the movement. His intellect, qualifications, and experience and public acceptability fit him for this role. And so it is of historic importance that in the arrangements preceding the general election, it was PAM who fielded candidates in 6 of the 8 constituents in St. Kitts, while the PLP fielded in 2 constituencies only, and the CCM in 3 constituencies in Nevis. In the outcome of the elections, the PLP won 1 seat, Dr. Harris's seat, with PAM winning 4 seats and the CCM 2 seats. Yet each party adhered to the selfless arrangements it had made in the pre-election agreement and formed a government under the leadership of Dr. Harris, evidencing the highest principles of unity. The success of unity is that it works with compromise and accountability, so that in the end, the concept is greater than the individuals who comprise it. That is the genius of the concept and why it could be a model that could help to improve the quality of life in our Caribbean region. Now, in closing, I suppose I ought to explain the origin of the topic of my speech. It is a quotation from the preamble to the Constitution of St. Christopher Nevis, the supreme law of our nation. In paragraph E of the preamble, it reads, whereas the people of St. Christopher Nevis are committed to achieve their national objectives with a unity of purpose. And tonight, I have sought to examine the concept of unity as espoused therein, and to show how the people of St. Kitts and Nevis are fulfilling their constitutional commitment to achieve their our national objectives with a unity of purpose. Thank you.